Hi there, my name is Serena Anthony and I'm the Chief People Officer at GroupM North America. At GroupM, we believe that the future success of our business and the advertising industry as a whole relies on greater representation and the presence of underrepresented groups. We have various internal initiatives and programs designed to tackle that with meaningful intention and have received recognition like the best place for multicultural women as a result. But these movements take energy and commitment from across the industry, and that is why we believe in and why we have supported the 3% Conference and movement and powerful voices like Amber Guild, who have been vocal and integral parts of the needed transformation in this industry and across others.
We're living in a time where so many companies are finally thinking about what it means to be a diverse, equitable, and inclusive organization. And while everyone needs to be a part of that change, for those of you who are leaders, I ask you to think deeply about the role we play in that. What decisions we make, our actions, our inactions. There are moments when we'll have to evaluate the cost of what it can mean to us personally to do the right thing. And yes, sometimes the cost to our company's revenue when confronted with systems and behaviors or people that are not enabling our teams to thrive and do their best work. As one of few women of color leaders in this industry, this is a daily confrontation. One that over the course of my career has come at the cost of my family's livelihood. And I would make that decision again and again. But we're in a moment now where so many companies are in a rush to ensure that their organizations reflect the world we live in. And I applaud this. But please understand that this is just the beginning. In 2020, I found myself doing some of the most important work of my career, work that would uncover the systemic challenges my former organization was having that created barriers to my colleagues' ability to thrive and do their best work. I did this while still maintaining my day job, running a global creative unit. I did this while we were all working to pivot our businesses amidst a pandemic. And I did this while undergoing cancer treatment. I did this because the signs for the ability for real systemic change were present, the company ready to do the work that would change its trajectory. But I've also learned the hard way that not every organization is willing to do the work necessary to create the real change that they say they want. Becoming a diverse, equitable, and inclusive organization is not about simply hiring one of us or many of us. It requires looking deep into your current culture and the how in which you work, ensuring that your behaviors and your practices are aligned and that they are delivering daily on your values. It requires evaluating who you work with and who is invested in your business. Becoming a diverse, equitable, and inclusive company requires fundamental change. Representation is absolutely necessary, but if the systems and behaviors don't change, then you're just bringing in more people that you will continue to marginalize and disadvantage. And you don't actually unlock the power of what we can all do together and the incredible impact we will have on the business, on our culture, on the world. Even though advocating and leading this type of change has always been a part of my career and my life, I will tell you it has been a constant education on how to do that impactfully. My latest lesson had to do with a company that found itself in the crosshairs of its values and its actions because of who wanted to invest in them. The funding was coming from a well-known investor in their industry, but who was also a divisive figure and who had a very public record of marginalizing women and people of color. I was clear immediately in my dissent. I was not okay that the success of our company would ultimately reinforce this person's power, their influence, and their bottom line, and how that would in turn reinforce systems that hurt women and people of color. But the decision was made to move forward. Apparently, the cost would be too great to pass on this investor. And while the decision ultimately was not mine to make, as a leader, it was one that I would and should be held accountable for. I found myself again being faced with the responsibility for carrying the burden of the work to make it okay with our people. I found myself at an impasse. I wasn't sure whether my impact was stronger staying and trying to change things from within as I have before, or stronger going. Practically, could I even afford to go? And I had to question, would I ever be okay with a company that wanted me to say yes to something that would require me to say no to everything I stood for? Could I afford not to go? I started to feel stuck. I started to feel powerless. And then, as the universe does, it sent me a sign, a text from my friend Nancy. And all it contained was an excerpt from a piece Nicole Hannah-Jones had just written hours earlier. For too long, powerful people have expected the people they have marginalized to sacrifice themselves to make things whole. The burden of working for racial justice is laid on the very people bearing the brunt of the injustice, and not the powerful people who maintain it. I say to you, I refuse. And in those two words, I refuse, I remembered my power. I remembered the women who came before me who had said those same words. Women who dared to believe that we shouldn't have to sacrifice ourselves and our values to fit into systems that continue to perpetuate cycles of marginalization and discrimination. Women who refused, even when it came at great cost. My grandmother, Martha Slayton Brown, a secretary in the Newark Public Schools, where she was often reminded she had a good job for a Black woman, which made them even more surprised when she had the audacity to refuse to enable decades of injustice and wrongdoing by not turning the other cheek, and called out what was happening. And she paid dearly for this refusal. She lost her job, she was blacklisted, and eventually she and her family, including my mom, became homeless. My mother, Gloria Brown Holmes, the breadwinner for her and her three girls, found herself witnessing her management boldly violating workers' rights to cut costs, workers who they didn't see as equal to them. My mother refused to simply bear witness, and instead she educated the workers on their rights and empowered them to help oppose what was happening. And yes, like her mother, it came at the cost of her livelihood. But their refusal to enable and participate in systems that purposely disadvantage them and other marginalized groups was their power. The cost would be temporary, but the impact of what they would do would get passed down through each generation. And with each new generation, a belief that we shouldn't have to sacrifice who we are and stay in systems that don't actually want to change. My grandmother and my mother made it possible for me, a woman of color, to be an executive leader and feel secure enough in my prospects to actively and proudly resign. Sometimes our power is in our refusal. And so in this moment we are in, I just want to remind the leaders of our industry that real commitment to creating a diverse, equitable, and inclusive organization means you refuse to continue to do business as usual. Yes, you will be faced with hard decisions, as the cost of fundamental change is not for the weary. But in those hard moments, I ask you to remember a woman named Martha who refused in the 1950s, a woman named Gloria who refused in the 1980s. And my name is Amber, and I refused in 2021. I think of them every day, what it cost them, but more importantly, everything that we have gained because of them. I stand proudly on their shoulders, and I hope one day my daughter and my son will stand on mine. Thank you.